Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tea and Chocolate. If you don't know me, my name is Lauren Spaniello. And my guest today is a dear friend. His name is Cassius Khan. He is a Ghazal and Tabla player, as well as a vocalist. And we reside in British Columbia, Canada, Vancouver specifically. And today I'm going to be speaking to Cassius about what it's like to be an artist in the midst of COVID. So thank you so much for being here today, Cassius. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for thinking of me for your interview. And I always love when we sit together and talk. It's always nice because you're such a good interviewer and there's so much to talk about with you. And unfortunately, we have to do this Zoom thing. Otherwise, I would have loved to have given you a big hug and sat down with you in person.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Cassius and I, at the moment, we stay in touch via social media, and I've seen some of his posts with regards to, what's going on in the world, and they're very passionate. So why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit and just tell the audience like how you became, the tabla, how you met each other, how you crossed paths with your musical instruments.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, my name is Cassius Khan, and I'm an Indian classical musician who plays the tabla and sings a form of Indian classical vocal music called Ghazal, which are poetries written in the language of Urdu and Hindi. And I specialize in that. I'm one of the few people in the world who specializes in this art. One of the unique aspects of my musicality is that I can play the tabla and sing simultaneously, which is something which is not practiced in Indian classical music. So I was given a title of Ustad or maestro in 2016 by one of my peers because of this talent. And I am the only performing artist in the world professionally at this point who does that kind of performance. So I started music at a very young age. My parents were really into music, and they really enjoyed, the musical soirees that they used to have every Saturday nights. And I used to always be there. I wouldn't be performing, but just listening. But I would take the instruments afterwards, and I would kind of play along on their tablas and their harmoniums. And my parents are not trained singers. My mother's father was a trained vocalist, and that's where I think I got it from. So I used to just tinker with the instruments and play. And as I became older, I became more seriously involved in the instruments and in the music and in the singing. So then I sought out a guru whose name was Mushtari Begum, and her brother Rukhsar Ali is the one who introduced me to her, as Rukhsar Ali is also my tabla teacher and one of my dad's best friends. And they used to work together for Qantas Airways in the 1970s back in the islands of Fiji. So my father was an aircraft engineer, and my uncle also another engineer. So the two of them would meet all the time. So that's how that meeting happened. And subsequently, my father said, take my son under your wing. You play tabla, maybe you can show him a few things. It became a lifelong, almost 35 years of a relationship in the field of music. And when I was introduced to his sister, who was a vocalist, then she started to impart her knowledge to me on how to do the bending of techniques with the voice, all the exercises that are involved, what ragas are, how to render a ghazal, how to sing it properly, how to use the words. So it became a lifelong learning experience, and I'm still learning today. I'll be 47 this year, so I'm constantly learning, and it's a very, very, very interesting path that I chose in my life.
Uh-huh. So when you said that your parents introduced it to you at a very early age,
Yes.
was this in your home? Like when they had the soirees, were they in your parents' home?
Yeah, so there were some in my parents' home, and then of course my dad, when he moved to Canada, he was supposed to go to Air Canada here in Vancouver to work as an aircraft engineer, but then he moved to Edmonton instead, where his two sisters worked. Mm-hmm. Then they said, well, you have all this money, why don't you open up your own business? And my dad always loved cars and hydraulic machines, so then he opened up his own shop. So a lot of my dad's friends and him, they were all entrepreneurs of business. So one of my uncles, that I call him uncle because he's my dad's friend, he used to have this appliance store on the bottom floor. On the top floor was this empty, huge space. So
Oh,
every
wow.
Saturdays, there, a stage was built and, carpeting, and there was a kitchen. So there would be like 20 families that would get together every Saturday where they would have music and good food. And it would be in that space. So we would all go there, this industrial area, park our cars, in that parking lot, and then just go up the stairs. And my mom, who's a fantastic cook, along with all the other aunties, they would cook delicious biryanis and
Oh,
palau and, kinds of lovely food. And then the music would start. So it was like, dinner and music. And, it was really fun because even my dad's other friends, who were kind of musicians, they would all come and then they would all sing together and play. And that's how I grew up for many Saturdays for years. It was Saturday's tradition. And that's what it was. But I never performed in any one of those.
well, that's really beautiful because it makes you kind of think about like what they used to do in terms of home concerts. And I'm
Yes.
wondering if there's something to be said about going back there, but we can talk about that. Obviously it wouldn't be conducive for several, types of artists, but there's something to be said about the simplicity of that. When you told me that, or just speaking of that now, it kind of reminds me of the way I was growing up now, with everyone getting together and everyone like bringing food and enjoying. I mean, the Italians did a little bit differently, but
Yeah.
not like you did, but that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Well,
So,
it's such an amazing cultural, especially on that
oh
side
yeah.
of the world. Everybody's sharing that huge continent on that side. It seems like the culture is so similar, with home stories of cooking, music, get-togethers, laughter, which I think is kind of lacking in North America, but is on the other side of the world. I feel that there's much more of that than there is here. So it's nice to see that. I mean, cultural families like from yourself, from the Italian tradition, or ourselves from the Indian tradition, we have kept that tradition of getting together at homes and having parties and food and music and stuff. It brings back lovely memories. When you have everybody around you.
Yeah. Well, you make a great point because creativity is just crucial, as you know. And when our creativity is stunted, there's really nothing left.
Right. You're right.
Right. I mean, there's nothing left. So, and to, I'm wondering what that is like for you as an artist in Canada before COVID, came around, in terms of like making a decent living and all those kinds of things. How would you describe that experience in Canada as an artist?
Well, coming back to that pre-COVID, even at home here, we would hold uh, impromptu kind of concerts
Right.
between all of the classical musicians that we would have here. And then of course it comes down to making a decent living. Yes, music has and has not provided that for, I think, for every artist. You've got your lean years and you have your rewarding years.
Yep.
And so all that comes into play as well. But yeah, like culturally, I've noticed the difference because I do a lot of traveling as well.
Mm.
And when I travel towards Europe or India, there's a huge difference in the cultural ideology. For example, like, I find, at least I find, and I don't know if you might agree with me or not, but there, I mean, people, when you go to their homes or whatever, immediately, you're invited in, they have to feed you, they have to give you tea and everything.
Yeah.
Here, there's not much of that. If you look at the general population, it's like, a lot of transactions are at the door, or just very kind of dry, weird kind of a feeling. Not with the cultural homes, but, with some of the others, I find that a little bit, it's not the same. There on the other side, it's like, even if you have 10 more people with you, oh, come in, whereas here it's like, oh, you've got 10 more people. No, so you know what I mean? It's like kind of like that
Yeah.
kind of a difference, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, like as a musician, like I've gotten to travel and I've gotten to see, both sides of that cultural spectrum. So, yeah.
Could we do better as Canadians, or not so much Canadians, but I mean, the funding, after all, comes from the government,
Yeah.
or at least some of it. And I'm wondering, from your sense, like what are the joys, that you've received from that, and what are the downsides from that?
Well, I've never received government funding to this day. I've applied for a lot of it and
Okay.
have not received anything.
And you've been declined
I've been declined all the time. Yeah.
because,
Well, I'm not too sure. But I think being a world musician, I find the term world music a very colonial term. It was invented by a guy named Robert Lee Brown, who was a
okay,
musicologist, and basically what his philosophy was is that whether it's African music or Chinese music or Indian music or music from the Pygmies or Aboriginal music, it all comes under one genre, which is called world music.
okay,
And whereas, you've got 232 different genres of rock music. I don't get that. Or 17 different genres of blues music, like 18 genres of country music. So I never understood that. Why is it that one particular form has 232 different styles? So it really, it becomes a problem when it comes
yeah.
for funding.
Hang on, can you break that down again for me?
Sure. So
Yeah, so I want to understand this because this is very interesting.
yeah, so there are, for example, there are different genres of music.
Correct. Yes. Okay.
So it's like, for example, if I decide that I will have, Indian classical music, I'm going to make 200 different genres of it. So one is instrumental with sitar, one is instrumental with santur, one is instrumental with esraj, one is instrumental with sarangi. And then I say Western music genre, under which classical Western music comes in, Baroque music comes in, symphony music comes in, rock and roll comes in, rap comes in, R&B comes in.
Okay.
And it comes under one genre. So it's just like one genre, Western genre. So what happens there is that when a grant is being applied to the government, what genre are you? Western genre. So, okay, but we already had, we've already given out like 4 grants to the Western genre.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm sorry, we've given a lot to the Western genre. This is what happens to world music in Canada. So they'll tell me, I'm sorry, we've already given, or we already have a spot for an African Congo playing, duet or something like that, which has nothing to do with Indian classical music. Indian classical music is a very rich and very ancient tradition.
Yeah.
So when that happens, any kind of a grant becomes literally impossible in the world music genre.
Okay.
So that's one thing. And then, so that makes you an obscure artist in Canada.
Mm.
So there doesn't seem to be much that the Canadian music scene is doing for world music. If there's really anything, if there is anything, we don't see it. When Stephen Harper cut the funding for world music, called the specialized recording segment, specialized being us because we're specialized musicians. Oh no, but go to Factor or go to Music Canada and they'll give you a grant. But no, they only give grants to R&B artists, rock and roll artists, country, blues, jazz, and so forth. So basically in the Western genre, there's nothing open for the world genre. So it becomes a catch-22 in this country. So it's very hard to receive any government funding, in my opinion, because I've applied for it and I just stopped applying because, what's the use? It just becomes, rejection letters. I can only take so many. After all, I am a human being, right? So
yes. Well,
yeah.
have you considered like leaving so that you are in the place where you could potentially be a successful artist?
Well, there was a time where my wife and I were discussing, that maybe India would be the best option for us to go to. But of course, that's not an option either, because there's a lot of loopholes that we'd have to, to do to get there. And then the lifestyle is different. The entire atmosphere is different. And so we decided to stick it out. What we did is, because Amika is originally from Saskatoon and I'm from Alberta, from Edmonton.
Right.
So after we got married, we moved away from the prairies because we lived in Edmonton for 2 years. And I was there my whole life, but there was always some kind of issue there as well as a musician. So that's another story altogether. So we decided to move here because we found that the cultural attitude here is quite different. Much more accepting than it is in a province, kind of a redneck province. It's a different cultural attitude here. Without putting too much.
Yeah.
I know I can see your face going red, but it's true.
No. There's one thing I absolutely love about you is that your transparency. It's like you just kind of say it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I say it because it's exactly what we have to deal with, right? So there, the opportunities were, I had to fight a lot for opportunities, and so there were a lot of things that I had to go through there as well. But coming to Vancouver now, we've been here for almost 13 years, but we were able to realize our potential more here because this is a national port of entry. So if we do get hired to do any concerts, and when the organization has to pay for flights and stuff, it's much better if we just have one flight that comes to a national port of entry rather than buying another ticket and then having to fly again, you know? So
Right.
this kind of works for us well.
Right.
And we were very lucky that the home that we had purchased in Edmonton at the time, it really quadrupled in price, which allowed us to, during the oil boom, which lasted, it was like literally a candle that blew out as quickly as it had been burned. But we took advantage of it and got out of there quickly. And as soon as we did, the market crashed again. So we were very lucky we got out when we did.
Oh, okay.
And so that was a good thing. So we basically came here and bought something.
So, okay. So let's talk about COVID.
Yeah.
Let's reflect back on when you first heard it and then how it's impacted your profession.
So when we first heard about it, it was towards December when it started to come out a little bit in the news that in China, there's a virus that's kind of floating around, right?
Yeah.
So then we heard about the bat story that, it came from the bat, right?
Right. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's like, it's
No, I know.
back as well. And I'm going, oh yeah, that. Okay.
Yeah. So, so the bat story, and, I'm going to say it because I don't believe the bat story. There's got to be more to it.
Okay.
And then afterwards, we kind of noticed that, like, we had some concerts set up, and then slowly, I started getting phone calls that, I'm sorry, unfortunately, this is what's happening right now. At that time, it was just about audience reduction. And they said, we won't be able to meet our financial responsibilities with the audience reduction imposed by the government. So at that time, it became to 500 people. We were actually in the midst of our rehearsals. We were going to be presenting a concert here locally in Vancouver with the Nod Arts Association, which belongs to my friend Ustad Amarjit Singh, who's a great tabla player. So he had hired Amika and I to be a part of this event. And so next thing you know, he says, hey, Cass, you know what? The audience size has been reduced. So should we still go for it? Because we won't be able to meet our financial obligations as far as it comes to paying the fees for the theater. It was at the Surrey Art Center, and then to pay the fees of the artist. So we said, okay, well, maybe we should look for a later date because, I'm pretty strict about those things. I'm not a free reducer kind of a guy. I'm like, no, in that case, if we can't do it, we can't do it.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, we just started getting calls from everywhere. I started getting calls from other people. I had some other collaborations that were going to be taking place locally and internationally. And I received a phone call that, unfortunately, we won't be able to keep our commitment. As a result of that, a lot of deposits that should have come in prior to, in my contract, there's a deposit that has to be paid by a certain date. And if that doesn't come in by a certain date, then we don't have to do the concert. But none of those deposits had come in at all. So at least if I had the deposits that came in, I would have been financially okay. But then for everything to disappear to zero was devastating for me. Mm-hmm. And then just the whole atmosphere changed everywhere. It became from that to 50 people to 0 people. And then basically watching other arts organizations crumble around me, in the next month, I hear that this folk festival has been permanently canceled, or this has closed permanently, or, this particular thing went bankrupt, or that went bankrupt. So it was one thing after another. And I started to get very worried because luckily, like Amika, she's working as an engineer as well. So she's working, so that's good. But I lost all my work. And as a result of that, just everything, my mind just went, I felt like I was going blank. Mm-hmm. This is not really happening. So losing all that work and then not earning was another problem for me, because since the age of 12, 13, I've been working. Mm-hmm. Started working in music, since my teenage years, and have been always earning from that. So we not being able to earn and not being able to work, not being able to present my art became very, very disturbing to me. And I think as a result of that, I went into a very dark space for a number of months, where I would just lie on the couch with a bag of potato chips, and I wouldn't know what time it was, what time I started, and what time it was over. I had no idea. That's never happened to me before, where that carried on for months. That's all I did is watch television. That's all I did, aside from housework and cooking and stuff.
Yeah.
But the majority of my day went into watching TV, because what else? And I didn't feel like composing anything. I didn't feel like playing music. I didn't feel like anything. And then receiving 0 emails in my inbox, whereas always I'd have so many emails a day from different organizations that I would apply to, and then not hearing anything back and not seeing any emails. And, even organizations that I've received awards from or whatever, none of them once ever checked in on me either to see how I was doing. So eye opener, very big eye opener for me.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about the eye-opening things that you have that have come to your consciousness. But I wanted to just ask you about throughout that depression. You mentioned to me in off camera the time where you actually didn't touch your instruments, and I would love for you to just describe that period as well as the relationship that you have with your instruments.
So I'm a person that spends many, many hours a day with his instruments. I mean, I'm in love with them, they're in love with me. And I consider all of my instruments living, breathing beings, supernatural beings.
Cool.
Because the way that I treat my instruments is such that if it wasn't for that instrument, if it wasn't for my tabla, I wouldn't be on the stage. It's that instrument that gave me that ability.
Yes.
So I will always, every time I go to my instrument, I always pranam to my instrument. I always, do this to my instrument, and then I start playing.
Wow.
And when I'm finished playing, I'll always do this with my instrument. I'll always say pranam, and I'll cover my instruments nicely, because that instrument, or those instruments, are what put me where I am today. So it was such a sad time. I mean, my studio in the front of the house, is very illuminated always. I've got a huge goddess of music, Saraswati mural on the wall. So it's a very surreal kind of a magical place for me, where I would spend a lot of my time. And, I just turned the lights off in the front, and I would walk past my instruments every day, and I would look at them. And I could also feel that my instruments didn't want to look at me either. I felt that sadness that my instruments were also in that state where they didn't want to be played either. And that carried on for months. Just walk past them. I would look at them, just kind of side glance, and just kind of walk away. So I went through that for about 4.5 months of that feeling.
And what got you out of it?
Well, really, Amika is such an amazing person. She's always been very, encouraging. She, every day she would just come and she just kind of ruffle my hair a little bit, kiss me on the cheek or something, or,
Yeah.
She's like, it's okay. If you don't feel like playing, it's okay. It'll come. And so she was one very big pillar of strength. And then a few of my friends, one of my friends is a life coach, and also the head coach for the Canadian Olympic badminton team. His name is Ram Nair. So he always checked in on me. Hey, brother, how are you? Don't feel bad. It's okay. Like, he would always give me words of encouragement and kind of keep me going. Then I have another friend. His name is Roy Naidu. He's about my dad's age. And, he would always constantly phone me to check in on me. Hey, how are you doing? Shall we go out for a little bit? Let's go for a walk. Or, and Roy Naidu used to learn with me alongside Mushtari Begum back in the day. So I've known him for about 25 years or so. So these people, would always check in on me. I've got friends in India that would phone in to check in on me. Hey, how are you doing? And stuff, So at least it was nice that I had some, a little bit of support there. But Amika has been the biggest support system for me. She never once pushed me that, you should be practicing, because she knows, and we, both of us, we're very overprotective on our physical practice, to make sure that we're in good shape, to make sure that we're well oiled. So, so hours and hours of practice a day for me, and then not doing anything. So yeah, so she was very strong with me, and, didn't push me at all, which I think is what I needed. So it just, one day I just walked past my instrument and I said, you know what, I'm going to go sit down and see what I can do. So I slowly approached and I sat down cross-legged, did this to my instrument, and then I started to play. And my hands were so rusty that nothing was coming out because, it's just, that's what happens.
Hmm.
So it took me a little bit of time. So every day I would go 10 minutes, then I'd go another 10 minutes, then I'd walk away, come back again for 10 more minutes. And then slowly it started to change into an hour. Then slowly it started changing into 2 hours. And then slowly it started changing into 3 hours. So I feel like the relationship between my instruments and me has been reestablished. So I can feel the energy from my instrument towards my hands, or my harmonium to my voice, or the tanpuras. The tanpuras are the stringed instruments, and I used to tune them every single day. So I have
Wow.
three tanpuras, and I used to tune all of them to perfection, so that even if I stepped on the floor of the studio and they would reverberate, everything would reverberate in tune, and all my tablas too. So everything would be tuned. And then once this happened, I never touched them again. So they were all completely out of tuning. So one day I sat down and I retuned everything, and so I started doing that again, where slowly I'd go and tune everything up, and making sure that everything sounds more cohesive. So it's a slow process, but I'm getting there. I'm getting back into it now.
Yeah. What would you say to, and I'm glad that you have,
Thank you.
yes. What would you say to other artists who feel that that they haven't, continued their relationship with their instrument in terms of, in that, if I may say it, like, understandably, their dark space?
Well, I think the best advice I could give them is that take your time. Don't jump back into it if you don't feel like it. I mean, don't force yourself.
Right.
That's one thing that I learned about myself. I never force myself on anything. If I don't want to do something, I won't do it.
Hmm.
I'll allow it to come to me. And that's the best advice I can give. I mean, we were so lucky last year that we were actually able to do our Mushtari Begum Festival. And I think that was the turning point. Really, that was kind of the turning point. When the Massey Theater contacted me and said, hey, Cass, we can do it for 50 people. Shall we go for it? Do you think you can do it? I said, yes, I'm going to do it. So that was a great feeling. And I think that kind of helped us get into tune. So for the other artists and musicians as well who are going through this dark space, just take your time and don't force yourself. Maybe delve into some other hobbies. I was doing a lot of gardening, planting stuff, keeping my hands dirty during this time because, not being able to, shake anybody's hand or hug them, there's always that transfer of bacteria. So in order to not keep my immune system weaker and weaker, we always delved our hands in the soil, making sure that, we were doing something so that we maintained some good immunity. And going for walks and stuff was also very helpful. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, the best thing I can say to them. Just focus on planting stuff, or just if you feel like watching television, do binge watching, that's fine too, or whatever you want to do. But your instrument and you will come back together at some point, because once a musician, always a musician. It doesn't matter. It always is in your blood. Yeah, always in your blood. Yeah.
Oh. Off camera again, you had mentioned to me about this article that you came across with regards to the arts. It was the government and how it was, the essential and the non-essential.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering how you could, if you could respond to that and speak to that.
Well, like I was saying to you off camera, that I remember seeing an article on social media, and there were many articles. There was one in particular that really stood out, and that article said something along the lines that, what is essential and what is not essential.
Mm-hmm.
And arts and music came under non-essential.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't just that, it was a poll. That was a public poll, like, how many people believed what was essential and not essential.
Ah, okay.
And when I saw that the general public, these polls, when they started saying that, oh, music and art is not essential at all, it really was a depressing thing to see, because
I would find it depressing.
Yeah, I mean, all my life, I was led to think that. Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying again?
No, that's it. I just said I would find it depressing.
Yeah.
And I have found it depressing.
Right, right. So all
Yes.
my life, I was led to think that, as a musician, I'm helping society by helping them with their pain.
Mm-hmm.
Ghazals being, compositions of love and heartbreak. That's what they are.
Yes.
People would come to listen, and the poets that have written these compositions over the many hundreds of years or so, and such wisdom. And I thought I was doing something
Mm-hmm.
good. When I saw this, that we are non-essential to people, it
Mm.
really, really broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And increasingly seeing that. And then also, the government has not once mentioned anywhere about the plight of the arts and music, the people in that particular sector. Nothing. Not once have they ever said, oh, musicians are going through a tough time, or artists are going through a tough time, or arts venues are going through a tough time. Nothing at all. So, sound engineers, theater directors, people of theater, music, dance, everything. Like, we were never once mentioned at all. I don't remember the government saying anything about us.
Yeah.
So
I
that
think it
was heartbreaking.
goes, sorry?
Sorry, I said that was very heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it goes back to, well, I guess this is a phenomenon around the world, just in terms of, everything being shut down.
Yeah.
And I think, if anything at all, like through COVID, the importance of art is absolutely essential. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the government is just trying to navigate, how to respond to this COVID. And whether we believe it exists or not, and all these other narratives, that are out there, there's some inconsistencies out there. And I just think, well, now is the time to be creative, to get artists working again. Open up a stadium, open up a space, keep it empty, and buy a ticket online. I don't know what else to, you know what I mean? If I could advocate for artists, that's something that I would love to do. If I would love to give you a job, I would love to, do that for every artist across
Or,
Canada. How you open their minds today is at this point, I'm completely like dumbfounded. I'm like,
oh,
how do we do that now? Like before, pre-COVID, it was already like, come on, folks. It's like, this is like medicine to the soul. Let's get this together.
yeah.
And now it's, I think, we're driven on, or we're traumatized to a certain extent. I think some more than others, depending upon your circumstances, of course,
Yeah.
and the fear that's instilled.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that you wish you could give people a job.
Yeah.
When we had a chance to actually do the Mushtari Begum Festival, that's the first thing we did. Like Amika and I were thinking we should just do it ourselves to save money,
Right.
because of all the other costs that were associated. But then, the theater director, Jessica Schneider, she was so amazing. She did not take one penny of fee from us. Can you imagine, for the theater that year?
Wow. That's incredible.
So she said, no, Cass, you don't have to pay for it, which is fantastic. So that really helped us out. Then, from my own pocket, I decided that, let's hire a few of the musicians that lost the work, when we were doing the first presentation before we lost that presentation at the Surrey Arts Center. So I invited that organization, the Nod Arts Foundation. I said, hey, listen, I'm going to hire you guys, and let's do this together. And in a sense, it wasn't just giving them work. It was also to lift their spirits, because all of us were very down.
Yeah.
So, I was so happy that I was able to provide not just an income for those artists, but to also provide them with self-esteem, with hope, and positivity. And I think it was one of the best presentations. It was only 75 minutes long. That was the conditions by the government, that we can only have it for 75 minutes. The Massey Theatre was extremely vigilant on their sanitation, on their physical distancing. So everything went very well for 50 people. It's a 1,260 seat theater. So to have 50 people in there was no problem. And that's just the thing, is like, why is it that the government can open up the malls, which are packed like sardine cans, and, flights that are going to and fro, and bars are opened, restaurants are open. But for the music and the arts, like where theaters are big and where there can be physical distancing, they've shut those people down. It's stupid. So the duplicity of the messaging of the government is something that's very frustrating for, especially all of us in the arts and music field. Very, very frustrating for us.
Yeah, there's been some inconsistencies noted by, I think, the majority of the population.
Yeah.
you know, and so I'm just, you mentioned the word hope
Yes.
and faith.
Yeah.
Do we have either of those right now?
I don't know. I mean, I think because of all of these imposed lockdowns, one after the other,
Mm.
you know, I'm looking at countries like India that have completely opened up. They're like, listen,
Oh, I know. I've spoken
they're
to
like,
someone from India.
yeah, and they're like, listen, you know,
It's,
they understand. It's like, you know, we can't stop this virus from happening. It's going to happen.
yeah.
They have a completely different attitude towards it. They're like, you know, and they're, of course, their immune systems are much stronger than ours because of the water that they have to deal with, the food that they have to deal with. I mean,
Right.
we're total wussies in the West, you know, like with such clean water and such good food, you know.
Yes, well, this is the other thing too, is it's our approach to it. It's in India, right? I think I've never been to India, but from what I'm told from my friends that who've gone,
Yeah,
you know, it's like life is like, right, it's at your doorstep. If someone's
exactly.
dying, it's like right there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that in itself is it's everything. It's like there's your reality. This is what's going to inevitably happen to us. And I think there's something about that as well. It's like they talk about, it's this fear about people dying.
Yeah,
And that's what we do. I mean,
yeah,
and I don't mean to sound sort of you know, detached or cold about it.
but it's a fact.
Yes, I mean, and the fact that
It's
this,
fact.
yeah, you know, and the fact that this gentleman was telling me that they've just moved forward in their lives, it's like that's incredible. And not every person, obviously, with the population there, can get the vaccine either. If you plan on getting it, so and one, you know, so it's when you think about the whole thing, I could just imagine how frustrating it is. Anyway, it's frustrating for me, and
Yeah,
um,
yeah, of course it's
so,
frustrating. I mean, the
yeah,
government messaging is very frustrating, you know, as we were discussing earlier. And it's just when I'm looking at other countries and how, you know, musicians have already gone back to work. There's already some touring happening in Europe right now with artists from India going into Europe to do touring. And, uh,
wow,
uh, and so that's also begun now. But it just seems like we are stuck, like we are completely locked down. And there's nothing happening here to that extent for music and arts. I think the Roxy Theater had a really funny, I don't know if you saw that on their
no,
billboard. They said, screw the arts, you know, we're becoming a pub and we're opening on January 23rd. And so what they're trying to show is that, you know, I mean, if it's a pub, it's okay for people to come in and drink and, you know,
yeah.
but as an arts venue, it cannot function. It's a government imposed shutdown. And so, I mean, what's the messaging there? Like, what are you trying to do? I mean, the arts sector has already suffered so much, and the arts sector suffers every single time there's any kind of a government spending cut. It's always the arts that takes the hit. The major hit is with the arts.
Yeah.
So, and I'm afraid that, you know, we're actually right now at such a danger in losing good artists and musicians from this particular profession, you know, who have decided to look for work elsewhere because they just can't make ends meet. I mean,
Well,
I'm lucky that Amika is working her job. Otherwise, I would be in the same position. I would have to find, and I'm not good at anything else. I can tell that right now. Like, you know, I'm not good at, you know, I have no customer service skills. I mean, so it's like, you know, I mean, and my education, what, you know, a degree in arts, where's that going to take you today? Like, I don't even remember anything that I did in university when I graduated. I don't remember anything. So it's like, you know, what would I do? So a lot of people have just moved away from the field, and if this continues, and I think it's time for artists and musicians to speak up against the government, and that's a problem too. A lot of artists are very passive. They don't want to piss anybody off. They just want to be quiet. I'm
yeah.
not one of those people. I'm totally different. I'll just speak my mind. I've gotten into trouble with it, of course, quite a number of times. Every time I opened up my mouth, but you know, what can you do?
Oh no, I admire you for it. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah,
So a lot of people
absolutely.
don't.
If you
I get
have the
some really
courage to
nasty
do it,
emails.
yeah. Well, shall we end off on a positive note?
Of course, we get it up on a positive note. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been very positive. I mean, we're
I
just talking
know, but
the
I
truth.
know, but there's been, I know. I mean, I'm trying to balance it out, right? The reality
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead. You can. We're almost done, Cassius. So you get the last, you know, word.
No,
Or
no, go ahead, go ahead.
no, 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 no.
Ask me something. I don't know.
This isn't about me.
That's okay. But you know, what would you like to ask me about the positive part?
Let's go back to faith and hope. Let's by the end of the year, Like, what's your guesstimation, do you think?
Well, I'll say one thing that's positive, and what I've seen is, okay, 2020 was a dark year for everybody, and I know that being a Gemini and following all of the horoscopes and where the planets were aligned,
Yeah.
Gemini got hit pretty hard. So I'm looking at it that way too. So it
Okay.
wasn't a good year for us.
Awesome.
With all the planets aligning a certain way, but that's another conversation. But what I do find is that I think people are slowly beginning to miss going to live performances, actually having the freedom to sit in a theater, to enjoy themselves, and to watch a festival or a performance on the street or anywhere. I think people are beginning to miss that. And so I have a feeling that, once everything is over, it might take another year or so. I have a feeling that maybe 2022 might be the time where, things will kind of pick up, because right now with this vaccination coming out and everything, I mean, there's still a lot of confusing things. Vaccination, do you still wear a mask? Yes. Will anything open up? No. Personally, I'm not going to take the vaccine myself. I'll just wait for everybody else to take it and see what happens. And I'm kind of on the bottom of the list anyways. Being a world musician, I'm on the very bottom of the list, probably like, along the riffraffs and whatever else. So I think that things will pick up, if not later this year. I think maybe, I hope that we can have our 10th anniversary Mushtari Begum Festival this year in September. If that happens, that'll be a great thing. If not, that's okay. We'll just have to make it work somehow.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe things might get better this year. I mean, at least across the border, I was expecting a big hullabaloo on the inauguration day, and was kind of biting my nails watching Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on the stage. So I was like, not sure what's going to happen. But everything went smoothly there. So, maybe there's going to be something good happening this year. So I don't know. But I feel a little bit positive this year compared to what I felt last year.
Yeah, you feel from last year to this year. That's good. That's good.
Maybe 2021. And then, of course, today is 21/21/21. Right? So what an auspicious day for you to have an interview with me too. Is that cool?
Wow.
This will be the only time ever.
That's fantastic.
21/21.
Oh my, okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to end off by saying, first of all, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And
thank you for this.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm glad that you and your instruments have reunited.
Oh yes, me too.
That you found your way back to each other.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. And I wish you all the best for the remainder of the year and thereafter. And I hope the festival does transpire for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And when it does, you have to come. You're my guest. I'm saying it publicly right now.
I know, and I haven't yet.
You will. Don't worry.
I know I will.
Yeah. If you give us a green light this year, I mean, it's going to be a huge celebration, and you have to come. And you're coming as my guest, so I don't care what you say. I'm going to drag you over if I have to.
Okay. All righty. Okay.
With my mask.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Cassius, thanks so much. I hope that you all enjoyed today's discussion and what it's been like for Cassius as an artist during COVID. And if you know of other artists who would just like to, listen to today's discussion and take a piece for themselves, and maybe it'll just help them on their journey. So thanks so much for joining me today. And I wish you all the best. Lots of love.
Lots of love to you too.
Thank you.